For today's video, we're going to look at some vintage Homer Laughlin teapots. We're going to examine those that have some strainers and those that do not. And what I'm going to go over actually applies to many different pottery companies. It's not just Homer. But there was a time when the spouts were made separate from the bases, and then they were applied. If you've ever done a factory tour at the plant in Knoll, sometimes they will allow people to apply handles to mugs, and that what they do is they dip them in a little bit of slip or liquid clay, and then they attach them to the mug, and then they get fired. The same thing happened with teapots. So for example, this one, which is the American Beauty shape, which was introduced in 1899, was made for about 10 or 11 years. The handle and the spout would have been cast separately, and then they would have been applied to the base. But before the spout was applied, some holes would have been punctured. The clay would have been soft. It would have been in its greenware state. You can see the holes down there. It's rather hard to see them because of the curvature of the body. But after those holes were punctured, sort of like the way you would do a salt and pepper shaker, they would then attach the spout. And this was done for virtually every teapot prior to 1936. There are a couple of exceptions, and those occur whenever that spout is high on the body, like this one. This is a Louis XVI teapot. There is a Louis XVI with a low spout that's applied, but this one happens to be a high spout, and so it just has a through hole because the spout is part of the mold. But for all the others, you're going to have applied spouts and with a strainer on the base. This one is from 1929. It's trellis, one of Frederick Reed's first shapes for the company. And there you can clearly see the strainer. That tells us that this spout was applied by hand. It was not part of the mold of the base. And we have one here. This is the Wells shape and a nice red glaze. Look inside, and again, you see the strainer. And you can see a pretty good seam line from where that spout was applied to the base. So again, spouts cast separately, bases cast separately. They puncture the holes into the base, and then they apply the spout. It goes through its first firing in bisque, then it gets glazed, and then goes through its second firing. Now, in 1936, Fiesta is introduced. The first teapot for Fiesta was the large teapot, or the 8-cup teapot, and the spout was high on the body. This spout was part of the mold, so there's nothing being applied here, and as a result, there's no strainer. It's just a through hole. There's our Fiesta marking. The medium teapot followed soon after, and again you have a spout that is high on the body, part of the mold, and there's no strainer. Every teapot that was created after Fiesta does not have a strainer. There's one exception to that, but all the others are just going to have through holes just like they do on Fiesta. So this is Eggshell Nautilus. No strainer. This particular one comes from the 50s, although Eggshell Nautilus was introduced, I believe it was like 1937, 38. Cavalier Eggshell comes from the mid-1950s. No strainer. Swing Eggshell, introduced in 1938. This particular one comes from the 40s. It has the ribbon and star treatment, which was used with Andover Eggshell. There's your through hole, no strainer. So again, all these teapots after Fiesta, they're not going to have a strainer. The exception is the craft shape. So craft blue, craft pink, and this one, which was used for hand-painted peasant wear, is actually called Craft Buff, B-U-F-F. I just recently learned that it had a proper name. I've always called it Tan Body. But the spout was made separately for this. This comes from 1937. And you see the strainer in the inside. That was necessary in that Craft Pink and Craft Blue have spouts that are in white body and their bases are in a different color. So they had to be made separately, and so it gets a strainer. So to recap, the older ones, with the exception of high spout pieces, are going to have strainers. Then in 1936, you have no strainers, starting with Fiesta, and that goes all the way through, with the exception of Craft Blue, Craft Pink, and hand-painted peasant wear, which is Craft Buff. There's one shape that has both, and that's Century, and of course Riviera goes with it. So this Century teapot, glazed in vellum, has nice gold trim. Look at the marking. Has the Wells Peacock marking on the bottom, so that's early 1930s. We look inside, and it has a strainer. So that spout was made separately. On the other hand, this Riviera teapot, which is based on the Century shape, Harlequin Blue, we look inside, there's no strainer. And you will find Riviera teapots with both a strainer and without a strainer, so there is an overlap. So it's late 1930s when this changeover occurs. This spout is part of the mold, and you will see a slight difference if we put them together. The Riviera spout is higher, or I should say the teapot with no strainer has a higher spout than the one that's applied. So if you have Riviera or Century teapots, take a look inside and see if you have a strainer or not. And that's going to be it for now.